Okay, today we're going to be looking at the ProView HD. This is a 1080p HD action camera. It's been sent to me from Chinavasion. There's links to the product in the video description. Current price at the time of making this video about £78, but add on postage and import duty to that as well. But still not bad for an action camera if it's any good. Well, it comes in this box. It's quite a nice box. Looks like a lot of other action cameras with a plastic bit on the top and some specs on the side. Those specs, you can see them now. It does 1080p at 30 or 25 frames a second, 720p at 60 or 50 frames a second, VGA at 120 frames a second. It records in MOV file format. It's got rather wide-angle lenses, it mentions on there, and it's got a little LCD screen on it as well, and an infrared remote control. So that sounds pretty exciting. Let's get into the box and have a look and see exactly how this thing performs. Well, first off, it's clipped into one of its mounts in the top there. You see the clip on the bottom there? That's what holds it into the box. That mount, of course, you can't really use because it's on this big base plate. It's just to hold it in the box there. Let's see what else is in that box, though. Let's tip it all out. This is my version of an unboxing. Basically, just tip everything out and see what you've got. And here it is. This is it. So let's have a look through all these different things. Well, there's a charger lead, USB charger. There's a USB A to B lead, mini B lead that is. There's this sort of strap thing here with a clip on the end. You notice the clip's one of those ones the camera can clip into. On the back of the strap there's rubber bits that go all the way along it, so that will mean that it won't slip around whatever you attach it to. It's going to hold pretty firm to that, so that's quite good. And of course that's where the camera clips in. Then we've got this little sort of strap here, Velcro strap, which I never quite understand what you're supposed to do with these, but there you go, that's a Velcro strap. Put it around your neck if you want, I don't care. This thing is obviously a handlebar mount. You can see that there's a few bits of rubber inside there to adjust it for different widths of handlebars. There's a screw thing at the end so you can get it open and put it over those bars and then tighten it up with this again. Just to show you what these sort of rubber bits are inside there. If I push them out, there's 3 different thicknesses there, which should enable you to put it round whatever bar you want, although it does look quite a big hole, that, so maybe you need sort of more of a crossbar on a sort of buggy or something than a handlebar. But anyway, the top bit's held in with a ball joint which you tighten up like that. Notice there's a screw thread on there for a tripod. I'll show you that a bit later on. Here's the manual. Looking through the manual, quite nice, all in English. Photos everywhere, makes it quite easy to understand. Just looking at some specs again here, these are a little bit more detailed than on the side of the box. One thing I will mention, in my test battery life was 1 hour 50 minutes, that's with the screen on and recording in 1080p mode. And there's a few little bits of information here. Notice you can have a micro SD card in this, up to 32 gigabytes in size. Of course it doesn't come with one of those, and it's got an HDMI out and a 2.5mm audio out, or so it pretends it has. I'll talk about that as well. The weight, it says, is 100 grams. There's the dimensions. This is a full-size HDMI to mini HDMI lead. Here are some 3M stickers. Those are different thicknesses. The black ones are thicker than the white ones, and those of course attached to the back of these things. This is another one of those clips that the camera can clip into, but this one's got belt loops on it. But also of course you can use it with the double-sided sticky stuff on the back and attach it to something with that. Now the other one doesn't have any of those belt loop holes on it, but what it does have is a flatness. It's flat. The other one has a curve to it, so that will make you decide which one you want to attach to things. Maybe a rounded one will go on a helmet better. Of course this is the remote control. It's an infrared remote control. It's got 2 buttons on it, and I'll show you what that does later on. So there you go, that's the camera inside its case. Now let's just try those weights to see that they weren't lying. Well, actually my weights are quite a bit more, 170 grams or 6 ounces. And that's because the weight that I'm doing is with the case on. Without the case, it comes to 3.5 ounces or 99 grams, which is pretty much what they said it was. So there you go, now you know how much it weighs. It doesn't feel very heavy, to be honest, in the hand. It's quite nice. Now the camera itself actually looks quite well designed. It looks like someone's had a good think about this when they were making it. It's quite a bit more compact than some of the cheap Chinese action cameras, which is good. On the base you've got a tripod screw hole and a speaker. On the side here you've got a mic and the infrared receiver. The sides of the camera have got this kind of raised ridge section at the bottom, which makes it easy to grip. You're not going to drop this. Now on the back there's a little door. If we open this catch here and drop that down, you can see inside there, that's where the micro SD card goes in a spring-loaded slot. There's the USB out, there's the HDMI out, and that little 2.5mm microphone out plug as well. or socket I should say. Now the front of it does look like it will revolve. I mean, you look at that little arrow, it looks like it's going to twist round. It doesn't twist round, it's fixed, so just something to bear in mind. 3 buttons along the back here, obviously power on, mode and record start stop, and a little LED above the screen there as well. Open the screen up, there's more buttons inside, there's 4 in here, and then in the middle of those there's a little reset hole as well. So to use this camera you're going to have to sort of press those buttons while looking at the screen on the back here, which is a little bit of a weird orientation, but I'll show you how it all works. Let's turn it on. First of all, hold it down for a couple of seconds before it'll turn on, so you can't accidentally turn it on. Then the screen comes on. You can see we've got some information on the screen here at the top, what mode we're in and things like that. If we press the button at the bottom right, it starts recording. Notice the red dot and the timer counting up there. That's to show it's recording. Press the button again, it stops recording. So that's rather simple. It's got a nice sort of beep sound when you do that as well. Now if you press the power button, notice the on-screen display disappears, which is something you might want to do. If you press the mode button, it goes into photo mode. It shows you how many photos you can take. Every time you press that button it takes a photo. Quite responsive as well, doesn't take too long to take them. Press mode again, we're back to where we started again. So let's get into some of those menus. So we'll press the playback button here, which is the bottom right one of the 4 there, and then this menu comes on. This shows the 5 different kinds of things the camera can record. Capture play are photos, for some reason. Video play is normal videos that you've recorded. G-sensor are things where the G-sensor has been activated and it's made a video. Cycle video are videos where you've looped it around and recorded it that way. And motion video are motion activated videos. I'll show you all these different things later on. But you select one of those files, which are all MOV files on the camera. You can play them back on the screen like this. The sound comes out of the speaker on the bottom there. So that's all fair and good. That's the playback menus. We can move on now and just show you the other menus, the more complicated ones. Well, the first thing, capture mode, that's about setting the photos. Capture, for some reason, in this camera are photos. There's a lot of weird things in these menus, typos and all sorts of stuff. But anyway, if we go into the photo menu, you got things like size, quality, exposure value, white balance and automatic photos. Automatic photos are where you get the camera to take a photo every one of these intervals that you see on the screen here. And by doing that, you can hold a camera in your hand, walk through a town and take a series of photos, or you can make them into time lapse and things like that if you combine them on your computer. Video mode, we'll go through this. The different video resolutions, you got 1080p 25, 30, 720p 50, 60 and VGA at 120 frames a second. That's pretty limited though. I'll show you what that does later on. Now if we go into the other things on here, you can see exposure value, white balance, mic volume, all self-explanatory. Video time though, if we choose 2 or 5 minutes on this one, that moves the camera into a kind of loop mode. Like a car camera, it records a 2-minute clip, then records another 2-minute clip and keeps doing that, fills the card up, deletes the oldest 2-minute clip. If you have it on close, that means off, and that means it just records normal video clips. I'll show you that again later on. Anti-shaking. This camera's got anti-shake, which is good. Open and close in this camera's language means on or off. So I had it on most of the time. And motion detection, well, you can have it record 30 seconds, a minute or whatever when it sees motion. Again, I'll show you that later on. Now in the setup menus, we've got things like language, format the card, change the date, screen save, which is when the screen goes off if you want it to after a certain amount of time. The G sensor, you can have 4G, 8G or close. Those will be the different sensitivities. Now the key sound is obviously the beep on or off. Screen convert, you can flip the screen upside down if you want. That might come in handy. I'll show you why later on again. There's lots of stuff coming later on, isn't there? Vision, that means version. Again, a typo, that would tell you the version of the camera. But these menus are a bit messy really. The fonts are all over the place and it's a bit of a disaster area. Auto off, how long it takes to power down, time and date stamp, you can have it on or off. And sound set adjusts the speaker volume. Now the remote control is actually quite handy. There's 2 buttons on it. The top one moves between the different video resolutions. It cycles round them all one after the other. And then the other button starts and stops the recording. Now that's all it does. But it's quite tricky changing those video resolutions in the menus. There's a lot of different menus to get through. So it's quite useful just using that remote control for that function. Now let's have a look at some footage that I took with the camera while I was out and about. Now these action cameras are designed for people to strap to their bodies, jump off a building and then film themselves hitting the pavement at a great speed. But I'm not that kind of person, so what I've done, I've gone out during my lunch hour and I've recorded some footage out and about around Manchester. And I think you can see from this it's doing a pretty good job. These are all 1080p 30 clips. I shot in 1080p 30 because it sort of matches YouTube a little bit better than some of the other resolutions. There are other clips in here as well, but I didn't do 1080p 25. I stuck to the sort of US standard ones. But as you can see, nice and sharp and clear, nice bright day as well, which always helps. But there's a lot of detail in the picture here. You can see into the background there, the headline on the newspaper seller's stand there. That's almost readable. I think if you zoomed in, you could probably actually read what was happening there. Probably nothing interesting though. Now, I notice on my computer as I'm speaking to you now, some of these clips look a little bit jerky, and I don't know if that's because my computer's having difficulty keeping up with them. Hopefully they don't look jerky when you're watching them. I mean, they shouldn't do because they aren't jerky. It's not dropping any frames. It looks pretty good. There's some downloadable clips on my website as well, so you can click on those and try them yourself on your own computer. Now, we've headed inside. I just want to show you what the different resolutions look like indoors. So this is 1080p, looking nice and sharp and clear, nice wide angle. That's 720p. Notice it goes more fisheye and it looks quite a bit softer as well. 720p on a lot of the Chinese cameras like this always have a wider angle for some reason, but also the resolution isn't really 720p. It looks pretty ropey, to be honest. It's better stick to 1080p. But look at VGA. This is VGA at 120 frames a second. I'm stood in the same spot, but just look how much of the screen you can see. It's right in the center. It's got a very narrow angle. Now, of course, the reason for that VGA 120, I suppose you're supposed to film things and then slow them down by 4 times so that you get super slow motion that's nice and smooth, but it's not really that useful. Now look at how it adjusts to brightness here. As I move the camera to the sky there a little bit, everything goes dark, move it downwards, it adjusts the brightness to what I consider to be about right, but just move it a little bit too high up again and it goes too dark. So the brightness is having a little bit of an issue. Now, one thing I did notice, if you go into the menus and change the exposure value from 0, which is standard, up to +2, it seems like the camera does a better job. Let me demonstrate. This is a normal scene on 0, and now I'm going to switch it over to +2, and that's what it looks like on +2. Now, it was only after a while that I realised this. Unfortunately, most of the clips are done on 0, but I think in future I'd use this camera on +2 all the time. Again, let's look at Manchester Central. That's with the exposure value set to 0, and then we'll just let it show you +2. It's an awful lot better, much more detail. One handy thing about the camera is once you've switched it off and switched it back on again, it does remember those settings. While I'm here, by the way, I'll just show you what 720p 60 looks like. You see the wider angle, but we'll just zoom in to show you what the cropped images look like for resolution. So look at the clock and details on 1080p, that's 720p. You get all that kind of weird effect on there. So 720p, I'd stay away from that on this camera, just stick to 1080p 30. Now, I'm going to go in the Printworks here to show you how it copes in low light conditions. And as you can see, it's not very good. This camera is the kind of camera that likes a nice, bright, sunny day. It's not a good camera for shooting in low light conditions. Now, I'll just show you the difference between stabilization on and off. So this is stabilization on. I'm holding it in my hand as I'm walking up the pavement, and then I'd switch it off, and that's what it looks like while it's off. So it does look quite a bit more wobbly, unless I developed a case of the wobbles between those two clips. I think the stabilization's helping. Now, let me just show you the difference in the field of view. So this is the stabilization off, and that's on. You notice you lose a tiny little bit off the edges, but it's nothing to concern yourself about. So I'd leave stabilization on all the time. Now, here's some photos I took with the camera. As you can see, the photos are in 4:3 format, and they use the whole lens, so you get this massive sort of weird fisheye effect on everything. It looks like you're looking through a kind of weird lens, which of course you are doing. They're nice and sharp and things, but the photos do have a marked fisheye effect, so I don't know whether or not you could really use these normally, but they're quite easy to take. Now, I just want to show you, when you're outside, notice how the sun bleaches out the screen, or darkens it at least. You can't see what's on the screen when you're outside, or it's very hard to anyway. And of course that makes it very difficult to get through those menus. Remember, we're using sort of yellow fonts on black backgrounds, and you can't see them. You can't get through the menus and pick things on here, which is where that remote comes in handy a little bit. But if you want to change anything else, you're pretty much stuffed when you're outside. Now, notice also when you press the record button, The LED doesn't do anything different, it stays on all the time. The only way you can tell you're recording is by looking at that LCD screen, which again is very hard to see outdoors. See that red dot? That's what's flashing to show it's recording. It'd be nice if the LED flashed, because that will give you more of a clue that you're actually recording. Now let's have a look at this waterproof case that came with the camera. Well, the front on it is glass, and then the rest of it, of course, is plastic. We've got two buttons on the back here which push through the case and then push the buttons on the camera. On the bottom is that clip there which mounts into those different things that come with it, just to show you how it does. I'll slide it into this one, it clicks in place and it's nice and firm on there, and then you just push the legs together again and it clicks out again. Now the middle bit does have a screw in it. If you unscrew that, you can twist it around and it will hold it in these notches in the right position, so you could put it on sort of sideways if you wanted to one of those clips, which is quite a nice feature. Now to get inside, you have to open the clip here from the back, which you do need a bit of a fingernail to get into there, which, as you know, I don't really have many. There's a seal around the top here because of course it's waterproof, and obviously you've got to make sure that's in place properly when you close it up. And then you just clip it over the front and there you go. It still looks quite neat inside the case, and of course you've got those two buttons on the back, so that means you can turn it on and off and start and stop recording. Again, the remote comes in handy here because you can do it without having to press it through the case, and also of course you can change those resolutions quite easily as well. Now the case does add a little bit of bulk to the camera. It doesn't look like an awful lot, but because that clips on at the bottom, it means you've got to mount it to things at the bottom, so that when I put it on top of my motorcycle helmet, you can see it does stick up quite a way. And actually I felt a little bit ridiculous driving around with this on top. It looked quite weird. But anyway, here's what the footage looked like that I took with the helmet camera, and as you can see, it's looking quite nice. My head seems to be shaking about quite a bit. I don't know if that's because of the wind or what, but it does look a little bit shaky. Of course, I've also seemed to have managed to mount it at a bit of an angle. I thought I got it straight, but just the tiniest little fraction out, and you end up with a clip where everything's sort of off center like this. But again, it's doing a pretty decent job. Now let me show you where the join in this clip is. It's just about to come up. Now, there you go, that was the join. You didn't see anything, did you? There were two clips there, and as the camera was recording, it was a 2-minute clip and then another 2-minute clip. That shows you that there's no gap between those clips. Sometimes these cameras have a bit of a gap between them, but this one doesn't. Now that clip was in 1080p 30. I changed the camera to 720p 60 and then set off back again. You can see a little bit more of the motorcycle at the bottom of the screen here, which shows you the wider angle. 720p 60 looks okay, but there's a bit of a problem. You can see it's misting up, and I'll tell you why that is. Because it was a very cold day, we've got a glass lens on the front of the camera, we've got the wind chill on there, the camera's getting warm inside its waterproof and airtight case. As a result, we're getting condensation on the lens. Now what I did, I stopped and let it clear and then carried on again, and this is some footage in 720p 60 again, but with a clear lens. So I just wanted to show you that, but of course we've got a bit of a problem here. The camera's getting warm and it's steaming up the case. The same thing happens with the Sony Action Camera as well. Now in that one I drilled some holes in the case, but of course you might not want to do something that drastic. You could always put some silica gel inside this case. There is just enough room at the bottom there to put some in, and that will absorb any moisture, at least I hope it will. But if you want, you could always drill some holes in the case like I did with the other one. But of course if you do that, that means it's not waterproof, and therefore you can't do this. This is just me demonstrating that it is waterproof, and also when you push it down it floats to the top, which is quite handy. You wouldn't want it dropping to the bottom of a lake, really, would you? So far we've used the camera on a motorcycle helmet and walking around. I just want to show you how you can use it as a car camera. All it involves is going into the menus, going into the video time menu and changing it to either 2 or 5 minutes. That means it will record 2 or 5 minute segments and loop around the video. So you can record all day long over and over again, just keep re-recording on the camera when it's full up. Now I'm just going to show you how that works. You plug in the power here. Imagine this is the power coming out of the 12-volt socket of your car through a USB adapter. The car switches on, the lighter socket switches on, the camera switches on and starts recording. You can see the red light flashing. Ignore the top one, that's just because it's got power coming through it, but the time's counting up there as well. So then you turn the car engine off, the power gets removed from the camera, obviously not physically removed like I've done here, your power will just get disconnected. The camera takes a few seconds and then it just shuts down. So that is all you need as a car camera. Basically, it comes on when the car switches on and goes off when the car switches off, and also loops the video around over and over. So then all you need is a suction cup to attach it to your car windscreen. I've got this one off another camera that I reviewed recently, and you can get smaller ones than this, obviously. One thing here, the menus are upside down, of course, if you use the camera upside down like this. So that's where that option comes in handy, to flip the menus so you can read them on the screen properly. Now there's a bit of a weird thing with this actually. What it does is it flips the video and the menus, so you'll never get the on-screen display and the video the right way up. You'll either have them wrong way up the other way or wrong way up this way. Flip them in your editing program. Whatever you do, you're going to end up with a time and date at the top right, like I've got it here, upside down, and the video the right way up. But if you can cope with that, which you should be able to unless there's something mentally wrong with you, then you've not got a problem. This is a car camera now as well as an action camera. So here's some footage I took. I've got it stuck in the car windscreen. Now one thing with this camera, it does like to be pointed downwards towards the road. It doesn't like to have too much sky, otherwise things get rather dark. You can see here it's getting quite dark, and as we go through these shadows, it does take a little bit of a time to adjust to the different brightnesses. But it's not so bad that it renders the footage unusable. I mean, all you're really trying to do with a car camera is record all your journeys so that if anything ever does happen, you're going to have some footage of it. Well, this is going to be pretty decent footage. As you can see, it's nice and sharp, being 1080p, nice and clear as well. You can make out things like registration numbers. Now, there are limitations though. If you go into low light conditions, as I showed you earlier on in the print works, the camera doesn't really like low light conditions. So in this car park, it looks like it's doing okay, but then all of a sudden it goes rather dark because it's trying to adjust and it doesn't quite like it. Also notice as I drive out of the car park here, there's a big bright light outside, of course, it adjusts to that, but then it makes everything else too dark. And what I've done here is I've got the camera pointed too high, and as a result it's adjusting its exposure for the sky rather than the road. But proper nighttime conditions are really a step too far for this camera. As you can see, this footage wouldn't really be that much use if there was an accident. You wouldn't better prove exactly what was going on. But while we're out, let's have a listen to the sound capabilities. Okay, so I'm heading down my usual dimly lit stretch of road. I mean, it's not that dimly lit, I can see it quite fine to drive down, but it's sometimes a road that cameras have a little bit of difficulty with because we've only got lights on the right hand side of the road. I'm just going to interrupt myself here. You can hear that the sound quality is fine actually, it's not bad at all, no crackle or hiss or anything, but obviously the video isn't really up to scratch at night time. Now let's have a look at that motion detection function. Notice you can take clips at 30 seconds, 1 minute or 3 minutes. That's what it will take when it sees motion in this mode. So once you've set it up, it immediately starts recording, but look, the timer's going on the right hand side, it goes up to 30 seconds, it's stopped recording. So now it's waiting for something to happen. If I put my hand in front of it, notice it starts recording. You can see the time counting up at the top right there. Now it doesn't just do it when the camera's off. If it's during the recording time and I move my hand in front of it again, so that was at 15 seconds, the camera somehow remembers that there's been motion during these 30 seconds, and then look at the timer now. When it gets to 30 seconds, it will stop recording this particular clip, but then it immediately starts recording another one. Now this is kind of useful for people that want to use it as a car camera, but they've got one of those cars where the power supply is on all the time. Now I'll show you what that looks like in the car. So again, I'm out, again it's going rather dark here, I've got the camera pointed a bit too high up, but just wait, the clip's going to split now. There you go, that was the split. So what this does, with it doing a 30-second clip, stop and then start again, it leaves about 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds between those clips. That's just something to bear in mind. Now let's try that HDMI out socket on the back of there. So we're plugging it into the television here. You can see the television behind. Rather a weird image this. Everything's kind of looking like some Top of the Pops video from 1970 odd, but you kind of get the idea. Now what this does is it streams the video out of the camera, but you can't press record. Well, you can press it, nothing will happen though. In photo mode again, press the record button, it doesn't take a photo. So you can't stream and record at the same time, you can just stream. And you can get into these menus, of course, which are rather sort of large on the screen here, but they work fine. And the idea is, of course, you play back your video clips through the camera, through the HDMI lead. And what happens is, as soon as it gets to the end of one clip, it will jump down and go up to the next clip afterwards. It plays them one after the other. Not seamlessly, there's a little bit of a gap between them, but that's just something that's quite useful. Now, of course, the remote here, I wanted to try it. You can change the resolutions here, but again, you can't start and stop recording. It just doesn't want to know about recording when it's plugged into the HDMI lead. One thing that I can do that's handy while it's here is show you how the different resolutions affect the field of view again. So this is the 1080p field of view. That's the 720p field of view. You can see quite a bit more. And then that's the VGA one where you just see the middle of the door handles. Now, looking at the specs of the video that comes out of this camera, if we look at 1080p 30 to start with, it records at a bitrate of 12.5 megabits a second. Now, that's just the video side of it. So if we add on the audio, which is 128 kilobits a second, and put that into it, the whole stream together in 1080p mode is using 12.7 megabits a second. If we just look at 720p 60, this is recording at 11.1 megabits a second, and then of course we've got to add on the audio again, which is exactly the same as the audio for the 1080p. It's mono and it's 128 kilobits a second. So the total container for this one, 11.2 megabits a second. Now those are variable bit rates, but that's pretty much what you're going to get out of it. Now the camera itself, I do like the design of it. I like the sort of grippiness of the case. I think they've actually thought this one through. It's pretty neat, really. It's probably the best sort of Chinese action camera that I've come across. The price may be a little bit too high, I think. It could do with knocking another £10–15 off it to become really competitive. That reset hole, by the way, I've had to press that a couple of times. The camera has locked up on me twice, just doing different things. So just something to think about there. It's not entirely reliable 100% of the time. I don't know why it locked up, but as soon as I pressed reset, it just came back to life again. The door on the back, a little bit fiddly to get in there. That 2.5mm socket there, that's supposed to be audio out. I've tried everything on that and nothing seemed to happen. It's not a mic in. Don't think you've got a mic in on this one. It doesn't work with that, but it also doesn't seem to do audio out either. Now, when you put the camera inside its case, it does add quite a bit to the size of it, but of course it adds some usability as well. You've got a clip on the bottom and you can get it damp and it won't damage it. But remember, the camera's also got a tripod screw on the bottom, so that's kind of useful and not particularly common on an action camera to get both options. Now, there are links to buy this in the video description, but there's also some downloadable clips that are on my blog that you can try yourself on your own computer without looking through YouTube's crazy re-encoded filter. Anyway, for the moment, thanks for watching.